Isn't it amazing that every time Deputy Kenny and I ask the Taoiseach questions about what his government, which has executive authority, is doing about dealing with the banking crisis, dealing with the shortage of credit in the economy, which is driving business to the wall and which is putting people out of work, the Taoiseach's answer always is to tell Deputy Kenny what's wrong with the Fine Gael proposals and to tell me what's wrong with what the Labour Party is proposing. Now, I want to ask the Taoiseach about the government's plans, the government's proposals. This idea that this agency, which again he has repeated here, that this agency, NAMA, will be established and that this agency is going to solve the problem. Back in January, Taoiseach, your Minister for Finance was asked about the idea of a bad bank. And he said that he thought a bad bank would be a free lunch for the other banks to be paid for by the taxpayer. Less than 3 months later, he announced in the emergency budget what is in effect a bad bank, NAMA, which is to buy up the bad debts and the toxic assets of the bank. Now, last week, the government rejected the alternative put forward by the Labour Party, which was the temporary nationalisation of the banks, a proposal, incidentally, which has the support of 20 eminent economists and which is one of the options that the IMF says should be considered by economies in this kind of situation.
We're looking for the cheapest priority.
Now, 6 weeks after the announcement of NAMA, 6 weeks, we're now 6 weeks, Taoiseach, after the announcement of NAMA, and we still have no idea what NAMA is about, what it's going to do, how it's going to be composed. We know none of the details. There was a briefing document which the government published on the night of the budget. The briefing document said, I'm quoting for it, "This is a priority for government." We still don't have the legislation, Taoiseach, and no idea as to when you're going to publish it. The briefing document said it is proposed to establish NAMA on a statutory basis. Since then, both the Taoiseach and the Minister for Finance have said that they intend to establish it initially on a non-statutory basis, and the Labour Party has pointed out to you that, of course, you can't do that, because if you do that, NAMA won't be able to do anything about anything, because it won't have any statutory authority to discount loans and to do the valuations and so on that it's supposed to do. You said 6 weeks ago, Minister for Finance, that NAMA would be established under the auspices of the NTMA. Last Thursday, the Chief Executive of the NTMA was before a Dáil committee. He didn't appear to know a great deal about NAMA. He didn't seem terribly enthusiastic about the idea. He told the committee that the NTMA didn't have either the staff or the resources to establish it, and that it would all eventually become bogged down in the courts, resulting in what he described as a bonanza for the lawyers. I quote from him, he says, "The implications of this thing are enormous." Now, I want to ask you about what exactly you are doing about this thing. Number of very specific questions. First of all, when are we going to get the details of it? When is legislation going to be published and enacted to establish it? When exactly will it be set up? And when exactly will it start work? Or is it being delayed, as one newspaper reported at the weekend, because the government is planning a second wave of bailouts, this time for the big developers? An article in one of the newspapers reported at the weekend. Taoiseach, no point in tutting me at all. I'm only putting to you what's in the public domain. Sunday newspaper published at the weekend said that your government, Department of Finance, are planning a formula whereby NAMA will not put any of the 20 big developers into liquidation or into receivership. So are we in a situation, Taoiseach, that your plan to deal with the banks, which is urgent, is now being delayed to provide a second bailout, on this occasion not for the banks but for the developers? Cancurla, I mean, that is quite an astonishing reply. First of all, we now have another shift in what we know. NAMA originally was supposed to be set up, as I understood it, for distressed loans. Taoiseach is now telling us that it's to include performing loans. Secondly, we're now being told that Taoiseach says that Dr. Summers highlighted the issues that have to be addressed. What Dr. Summers highlighted were the issues that should have been addressed before the government made a decision on it. And what the Taoiseach is now outlining to the House, we're going to have an advisory committee, we're going to have a steering group, we're engaging with the European Commission, we're considering, we're delaying, we're dithering on it. And meanwhile, I mean, this is urgent. You said yourself, your Minister for Finance on Budget Day said that this was something that was urgent, that this was a government priority. This is something we were told was going to have to be done quickly. You're now saying you're going to have all this delay and all this consideration and all this period of reflection, it would appear, which action. There is no action in this. There is no action in this. All you're doing, you're telling us that you're doing all of this in order to get it right. This has all the hallmarks of the kind of way that the government considered the privatisation of telecom. And you know how right you got that. It has all the hallmarks of how you considered the establishment of the HSE. And we know how right you got that as well. This is dither and delay. While businesses are going to the wall, while businesses are being starved of the credit that they need, while the banks are in trouble, while confidence in the country, both domestic confidence by consumers and by business and international confidence, is eroding all of the time. And I ask you a number of very simple questions. When is it going to be set up? When are we going to see the legislation? When is it going to start work? And what's delaying it? And all you have given me is this big long ramble and rigmarole about all the committees and all of the advisory bodies and all of the consideration. The truth of the matter, Taoiseach, is this, and this is the frightening thing for the House and for the country. The truth of the matter is that the government which is charged with trying to get this country out of the economic difficulty that it's in, part of which is sorting out the banks, clearly doesn't know from one week to the next what you're doing. You haven't a clue.